Am I the bad guy for not being mad about my girlfriend's parents' racial insults toward me? I want to share a personal experience that has been weighing on my mind. I'm a 34-year-old man in a loving relationship with my girlfriend, who I'll call Kanojo. She's 25 and we've been together for a little over 2 years. Our relationship is strong and I even have plans to propose by the end of the year. However, we recently faced a significant challenge involving her parents. Kanojo and I come from very different cultural backgrounds. I'm of West African descent and she is Japanese. From the start, we were aware that our differences could lead to potential issues, especially concerning her parents' views. Kanojo grew up with a somewhat skewed perspective on race, but she has since embraced a more open-minded outlook after making friends from diverse backgrounds in the West. After much deliberation, we decided it was time for me to meet her parents. Kanojo was understandably anxious about their reaction, especially since they were not thrilled to learn I was black. Despite her reservations, I encouraged her to go through with the dinner, recognizing how important family is in Japanese culture. I wanted to support her, even if it meant facing some uncomfortable moments. When the day finally came, I was prepared for a challenging evening. Unfortunately, it turned out to be just that. During our 4-hour dinner, her parents made several racially charged comments and poked fun at my imperfect Japanese, which I've been diligently learning for the past 3 years. At one point, her mother even expressed that they would have preferred Kanojo to be with a Japanese man. It was clear they were not pleased with her choice of partner. What surprised me was my own reaction, or lack thereof. Throughout the dinner, I remained calm and respectful, choosing not to retaliate against their insults. I even tried to laugh along with some of their jabs, hoping to keep the atmosphere light and avoid any hostility. Kanojo attempted to defend me a couple of times, but when her parents didn't back down, she eventually gave up. After we left, I felt disappointed by their behavior, but considered the evening a success because it didn't escalate into a dramatic confrontation. I was happy to have maintained a peaceful environment for Kanojo's sake. However, she was visibly upset, not just with her parents but also with me for not standing up for myself. She expected me to defend my dignity, especially in the face of such disrespect. I explained my reasoning to her. I wanted to preserve her relationship with her parents, fearing that a confrontation might change how they viewed her. I also tend to be an easygoing person, slow to anger, and I believe that actions speak louder than words. Insults don't typically bother me, and I thought it would be counterproductive to lose my cool over mere words. However, after discussing the situation with a couple of friends, I began to question my approach. They understood my desire for peace, but felt that I had compromised my self-respect in the process. One friend even suggested that my behavior might lead Kanojo to see me in a less favorable light, as if I wouldn't stand up for her when it mattered. This made me reflect deeply on my actions. Should I have reacted differently? Did my decision to remain calm and collected ultimately affect our relationship negatively? I was left pondering whether my easygoing nature was a strength or a weakness in this situation. As I sought advice from others, I realized that this situation was more complex than I initially thought. I wanted to keep the peace, but at what cost? I also considered the future. What if we decided to have children? Would I allow her parents to continue making disparaging comments in front of them? After some time to think, I spoke with Kanojo again. I intended to update her on my feelings and the advice I had received, but a significant development arose from our conversation. I realized that this was not just about me. It was about us and how we navigate challenges together as a couple. In the end, I learned that while it's important to maintain harmony, it's equally crucial to stand up for oneself and for those we care about. I hope to find a balance that respects both my partner's family and my own dignity as we continue to build our future together. Thank you for listening to my story. I never imagined I would find myself in a situation where I had to confront the racial insults directed at me by my girlfriend's parents. It was a dinner that should have been a simple gathering, but it quickly turned into a moment that challenged my beliefs about respect, tolerance, and the future I envisioned with my partner, whom I affectionately call Kanojo, the Japanese word for girlfriend. As I sat at the dinner table, I felt a wave of emotions wash over me. I have always believed that standing up for myself is essential, especially when it comes to something as fundamental as my identity. However, in that moment, I chose to keep the peace. I didn't want to create tension that could reflect poorly on Kanojo, who still lived with her parents. I thought about how my actions could affect her home life, and I wanted to maintain a pleasant atmosphere, even if it meant swallowing my pride. After the dinner, I reflected on the situation. I realized that while I could brush off their comments, I was more concerned about the implications for our future. Kanojo and I have talked about having children, and I couldn't bear the thought of exposing them to the same harmful language I had endured. I had defended her against racist remarks in the past, and I knew I would do the same for our future children, who would be of mixed heritage. The idea of their grandparents harboring such views was unsettling. I turned to the online community for advice, sharing my experience and seeking insight. Many people offered their perspectives, emphasizing that I was not at fault for my decision to remain calm during the dinner. They pointed out that my approach could open the door for a more cordial relationship with her parents, allowing them to get to know me better and perhaps challenge their ingrained biases. However, some cautioned that my silence might set a precedent for future disrespect, potentially leading to boundary issues down the line. This feedback made me realize that I needed to have a serious conversation with Kanojo. Almost 2 weeks later, I finally mustered the courage to discuss the events of that night. I expressed my feelings about her parents' comments and how they affected me. I wanted her to understand that, while I could handle their insults, I was more concerned about the long-term implications for our family. Kanojo listened intently and shared her own frustrations. She was upset that her parents couldn't keep their bigotry in check, even for one evening. More importantly, she wanted them to see that she was with someone who had the confidence to stand up for himself. I reassured her that I would never allow such disrespect to extend to our future children. She admitted that she sometimes felt small in front of her parents and struggled to assert herself, which made her feel like she was failing me. Our conversation was emotional, filled with tears and vulnerability. We both realized the importance of communication in our relationship. It was a moment of growth for us, as we learned to better understand each other's perspectives. I left that conversation feeling more connected to Kanojo, knowing that we were on the same page when it came to protecting our future family from the harmful attitudes of her parents. In the end, I learned that while it's important to stand my ground, it's equally vital to approach these situations with empathy and understanding. Together, Kanojo and I are committed to navigating the complexities of our relationship and ensuring that our future children grow up in an environment free from prejudice. It's a journey, but one that I believe will strengthen our bond and pave the way for a brighter future. I thought I had reached the end of a challenging chapter in my relationship, but one Friday morning, I received an unexpected text from my girlfriend's father, Chi-Chi, inviting me to dinner the following evening. After some hesitation, I decided to accept the invitation to a steakhouse he frequents. On the day of our meeting, I noticed a slight shift in Chi-Chi's demeanor. He seemed warmer, speaking more casually and even offering to pay for my meal and drinks. While I appreciated the gesture, I remained cautious and respectful throughout our conversation. During dinner, I learned that my girlfriend, whom I'll refer to as Kanojo, had confronted her parents about their behavior during a previous dinner. This was significant because she had never really stood up to them before. She had expressed her disappointment in their bigoted comments and emphasized how insulting they were to me. One point she made struck a chord with Chi-Chi. She reminded him that most people, regardless of their background, would only tolerate a certain level of disrespect before reacting, whether verbally or physically. What surprised me was that despite the tension, I had managed to keep my composure during that previous dinner. I had chosen to remain calm and respectful, prioritizing Kanojo's relationship with her parents over my own feelings. Chi-Chi acknowledged this and admitted that my humility made him reconsider his initial impressions of me. He praised my ability to hold my tongue, something he admitted he struggled with at my age. Chi-Chi expressed regret for his past comments and shared that his views on race had been shaped by misinformation and unfortunate media portrayals. He recognized that he still held some prejudices, but assured me that he would work to unlearn them for the sake of his daughter and our relationship. He practically begged for my forgiveness and asked if we could start over. I responded that I held no hard feelings as long as Kanojo was happy. Curious about her mother, Oka, I inquired whether she shared Chi-Chi's newfound perspective. Chi-Chi's expression changed, and he revealed that Oka had not yet come around. Her protectiveness over Kanojo led her to cling to her prejudiced views, believing it was safer to be cautious. In fact, she blamed me for Kanojo's outburst, accusing me of negatively influencing her. Chi-Chi had tried to change her mind, but had not succeeded. However, He managed to get her to agree not to be openly antagonistic if we were to meet again in the future. While I felt disappointed, I wasn't entirely surprised by Oka's stance. I thanked Chi-Chi for his honesty and made it clear that I wouldn't go out of my way to change her mind. That was her journey, not mine. I held no animosity towards her and was still open to building some kind of relationship if she was willing. After a lengthy evening filled with conversation and drinks at Chi-Chi's expense, I returned home to Kanojo, who had chosen not to see her parents that evening. She was surprised to hear how the dinner had unfolded, but was pleased that it ended on a positive note. We both agreed that my decision to remain calm during the previous dinner had paved the way for this new beginning. We decided that I wouldn't meet her parents again for a while, especially not Oka, but we left the door open for future interactions. Overall, I felt that the situation had been resolved as well as I could have hoped. As I reflect on this experience, I realize how important it is to approach difficult conversations with patience and understanding. I believe this will be my last update for the foreseeable future, but if anything significant happens down the line, I'll be happy to share. Thank you for taking the time to read my story. I find myself in a unique situation that has tested my patience and understanding in ways I never anticipated. My girlfriend, whom I affectionately call Kanojo, comes from a different cultural background than mine. I'm originally from Ghana, and while my family has been somewhat accepting of our relationship, there's an underlying tension that I can't ignore. Kanojo's parents are not particularly warm or friendly, and our conversations often feel strained. They express mild disappointment about her dating outside our culture, but they treat her with respect whenever she visits, which is about once every other month. My younger brother, who is also dating outside our culture, seems to have a much easier time connecting with Kanojo. They meet frequently and get along well, which is a relief for both of us. However, during one of our family dinners, I experienced a series of racial insults from Kanojo's parents that left me feeling conflicted. For instance, her father casually remarked, "I usually see some of the young black boys when I go into town. They look so brutish. I wonder what troubles they plan to do." Another comment that struck me was, "You don't typically see people of your color working in a mathematics-based career like yourself. You need a lot of intelligence and discipline to do it." Perhaps the most hurtful comment came when her mother laughed and said, "I can't imagine having such a tan-skinned grandchild. Our grandchild would look like a country bumpkin." Despite these comments, I found myself surprisingly calm. I didn't react with anger or frustration, which might have been the expected response. Instead, I focused on how Kanojo would feel about her parents' remarks. To my relief, she stood up for me in a way I had never seen before. By her own admission, she has struggled to confront her parents throughout her life, but that night, she stepped out of her comfort zone to defend me. It was a moment that moved me deeply, and I felt incredibly lucky to have her by my side. In the aftermath, I reflected on the nature of racism and how it can fester within families. While her father may not be progressing as quickly as I would like, I believe he is making an effort to change. I understand that healing takes time, patience, and grace from everyone involved. I hold on to hope that with time we can cultivate a better relationship, not just for ourselves, but for any future children we might have. I've always been slow to anger, and I tend to believe that most people are more ignorant than malicious. This perspective allows me to approach others with empathy, even when faced with insensitivity. I never hated Kanojo's parents, despite their views. Instead, I see the potential for growth and understanding. I hope that as her father continues to evolve, her mother will also come to realize the impact of her words and actions on her relationship with her daughter. As I navigate this complex landscape of love and cultural differences, I remain committed to fostering understanding and patience. I believe that with time, we can build a bridge between our worlds, and perhaps one day we will all come together as a family.